We are now recording.
Well, welcome everyone tonight to our drop-in mindfulness program here, Prince of Peace Church, sponsored by Unitarian Universalist Church of Portage. And we're continuing from last week. We were talking about automatic pilot, and I'll just read a couple quick definitions here, and then I'll go into some more detail. As we discussed last time, this book is the Mindful Way workbook that I'm quoting out of. But they describe most of us live on autopilot versus living consciously with conscious choice and awareness in the moment. And this is described as, this automatic pilot is described as a doing mode. So in doing mode, we live on automatic pilot much of the time. We drive, we walk, we eat, even speak without clear awareness of what we're doing. Doing starts up automatically whenever there is a mismatch between where we are now and where we want to be. This mismatch between where we are now and where we wish we were. Again, moving out of the present moment into future tense, living in the future and missing the moment. In this mode, we focus narrowly on our goals. We rarely stop and notice the wonder of what is happening around us as we move through our lives. And we can end up missing much of our lives, forever postponing the time when life will be less hectic and we'll really notice things again. I had this experience the other day when I was walking, I think it was right yesterday, it was 70 degrees out. My dog was happy, things were doing well. And what was my mind doing? It was dwelling on some things that I was unhappy about. I'm going, well, do I want to, this space out, be caught up in this rumination on what's missing, the 1% that's missing? Of course, that's what I should be focusing on. And I kind of had to laugh, and I kind of inventoried all the things that were going well in life. And I decided, I think I'll shift and enjoy the walk, And we do this with mindfulness, we do this dozens of times a day because that automatic pilot is so ingrained. It's easy to just get swept up into thoughts of what should have been, regrets about the past, or joys about the past, reminiscing about the past, or same with the future, anticipating potential catastrophes in the future. And in today's world, it's easy to get caught up in that because there's a lot of imbalance and disharmony and dysfunction in our culture, in our world today. We're quite out of balance, probably because we are so in doing mode. Being mode is defined this way. The being mode is intentional rather than automatic. This means we can choose what to do next rather than run on old, worn out patterns. This allows us to see things as if for the first time. We re-inhabit the present moment and become fully conscious of our lives. Being brings a freshness to our perception, and we become more fully alive and aware again. So this quality of present moment awareness, I would describe it as being characterized with a sense of openness, a sense of curiosity. And when I say openness, it's the suspension or letting go of judgment, the judging mind, and being open to what's really here without having to interpret what's right in front of me right now through old mental patterns, through old thought forms, through old experiences. And what we find is that when we can rest more in that experience, we actually see what's happening with a greater clarity. We actually are taking in much more information when we're not filtering the present moment through past experience. Because that past experience, of course, we know the judgmental mind has all sorts of preferences and assumptions that it's filtered through So when that happens, we tend not to notice fully what's going on. We're noticing more what our assumptions and perceptions are than the actual content of the moment. And I would say this is especially important in interpersonal relationships. The doing mode is quite useful for driving down the road, for cooking a meal, for doing an accounting balance sheet, or even writing or something like that. But in the interpersonal realm, there's a risk if we're depending too much on our past assumptions, that again, we're experiencing the person through other experiences and not that present experience. And that person, even if we've known them all their life, is unique in that moment. They're presenting themselves in a unique way that if we're truly open to it, we can see that and value that. And with that, I think open seeing, we might notice things that are going on in that person right then that we might overlook. We're just caught up totally in our old pattern of seeing that person through our old assumptions and miss something very important. So there's three qualities I'll mention in the kind of the progression of mindfulness. The first quality is this capacity for self-awareness. So we start to, as we do sitting practice and bring the sitting practice into our daily life, by being able to see the activity of the mind a little bit more objectively and not being so subjectively ingrained in it or attached to it, immersed in it. With that bit of objectivity, we can notice the patterns, the old patterns of the mind, and begin to move into what we might call self-regulation. So we see certain patterns of mind that from the past that maybe are useful, but we see other patterns that no longer serve us, and we can let those go. So as we've probably heard it many times, mindfulness gives that moment of pause before reacting automatically. There's a pause that we develop, and we can then make a conscious choice on how to respond to the moment and not just simply react from that automatic autopilot mode. And the third dimension, so we have self-awareness. With that self-awareness, we start to be able to self-regulate. We start to be able to respond consciously as opposed to automatically. And the third dimension that we begin to develop, and this is more than just mindfulness, we actually start to bring in compassion practice. And that's what we call self-transcendence. And I can't quote the neuroscience completely clearly, but I know that some of the research, we've got an expert in the room, we'll see if they might pipe up here. It's been shown that meditators, I think this was primarily Tibetan meditators, Buddhist meditators, who are likely doing compassion practice as well. So both concentration practice, mindfulness practice, and compassion practice, their brains process information differently. And there's a shift from a narrow sense of a personalized experience of a separate self, an us and them world, and the brain starts to shift to more of a relational sense of the world. And out of that relational sense, there's a higher capacity for empathy, connection, and interrelationship. So that idea of self-transcendence, actually, as we do the practices of mindfulness and compassion, the solid sense of a separate self begins to soften and dissolve, because what we see is that separate self is largely a thought self. It's a conceptual self. And when we learn to just rest in the moment without the thinking mind looking at the past and future, and just simply resting quietly in the moment, we actually begin to touch a different quality of awareness. And that awareness is less self-focused. There's a sense of, at a deep level, a sense of connection, a sense of love, a sense of wholeness, and the limited sense of self begins to dissolve a bit. And we really start to touch into that relational dimension. And that's a big shift in how we then begin to act in the world when we start to see that we're part of a collective, that others do impact us deeply, that are around us, our family, friends, relationships, and the quality of those relationships impact our inner life, and our inner life impacts that as well. So there's a system of relationships, a community of relationships that we're participating in, as well as the earth itself, nature itself. And I would say ultimately, as we start to touch that more and more, that interrelated sense of self, we can begin to cultivate a sense of joy and wonder, reconnecting to the beauty and the awesomeness of life, and not seeing the world just through the eyes of language objectively. As I like to quote, Thich Nhat Hanh would talk about, he would hold up a flower and ask people, what did they see? Describe what you see. And some would describe the color of the flower or the parts of the flower or the stem. And then he would say, that's all true. And what else do you see? He'd say, look deeply into the flower. And he would say, what he would see would be the cloud in the flower, the rain that nourished that flower. He would see the biome of the earth, the mycelia in the earth that broke down minerals so that the plant could take up those nutrients and give life to it. He saw the sunshine. He saw the wind, the breeze blowing the flower, and so forth. So when we look at any object, it's easy to see the surface and say, oh, seen it, been there, done that. And we can lose the essential nature because of language. But as we begin to connect more deeply to that relational dimension, we begin to experience the complex interdependence of any object. I suppose if we look at any object, we could trace it to the Big Bang and walk it right up through supernovas and different elements that are produced, and ultimately multicellular organisms moving into organs and beings and humans ultimately, and many other beings. But there's this deep historical interrelatedness of all that's here. And it's pretty profound when we begin to experience our body that way, that we can see in the midst of this body is the whole universe. This is a manifestation of, as best we know it, 13, 15 billion years. Maybe it's one cycle, maybe it's been a trillion, 15 billion year cycles. I don't know what the cosmologists have come up with lately. And that awareness can really help us, one, shift from that isolated, lonely sense of self to a sense of self that's infinite, really. It's universal. And some would say it's a sense of self that has no beginning and no end. It's an eternal self. So that's my philosophical spiel for the evening. Any questions or comments? And you say, how do you do this during the day? How do you do this in our day-to-day life? And practice on the cushion or the chair is helpful because we're learning to notice the mind in our mindfulness, and we see where, as we sit quietly watching the breath, and we notice when the mind wanders, we start to notice where it wanders to. Maybe it's a lot of planning going on, or regrets, or could be all sorts of things at different times throughout the year. It changes. But we start to understand our mind more. We start to see what triggers our reactivity. We start to see how certain thoughts trigger certain emotions. So there's a self-awareness that begins to cultivate. And again, through that self-awareness, then we can begin to choose a bit more on how to respond. And we loosen up also, realizing that our automatic reactive nature is largely just an artifact of how the brain works, how it assembles information, how it organizes the world, and it's not the whole of who we are. There's something much bigger that we can connect to. And I would say that that bigger part is that sense of interconnectedness, and out of that interconnectedness, the love and the compassion, um, and the kindness that begins to arise out of that awareness. So as we do our cushion work and become more familiar with the mind and the habits of the mind, we can begin to bring that into our daily life by being a bit more attentive to our reactivity, to that reactive doing mind. And when we feel ourselves getting wound up, caught up, tunnel vision, going after something, to just pause for a second. Maybe take 3 seconds, 3 breaths, maybe more than 3 seconds, but maybe 15 seconds, 3 breaths. Come back into the body and connect to the wisdom of the body, because it's here right now. And it's connected to the earth as well. We're part of this earth. So the body's really important to connect to throughout the day as we get caught up into the mental sphere. And of course, we know we're in a world that's what it demands so much, is mental all day long. So it's important to reconnect, even just looking out the window, or if you're working at a job site, if you can get outside for a few minutes and being aware of the environment around you, the experience of walking, the air on the skin, the sun on the skin, the air, the breeze, whatever is there, sounds, and just really shifting out of the mind analyzing, reacting, to just presence in the moment, can really rebalance our nervous system that's often so over energized in the doing, always doing. And there shouldn't be any guilt about that. In the middle of resting, we go, well, I could be getting something done. But I think we know that it can wear us out if we're always in the doing mode. It can cover over deeper needs around meaning in life. We can just stay busy, stay distracted. And I know when I first retired, I was sitting at home in the silence, and it was pretty lonely and kind of scary. And there was no ground to stand on, because I was used to working and being in that space, and it, kept me engaged and distracted to an extent. Enjoyment as well. But I had to recalibrate and become friends with the quiet. And the loneliness actually then could start to open up into something deeper. I don't know how that plays out for other people. If you found that, pausing, some of us take vacations or retreats or whatever it might be, maybe evening out with friends, but different ways that you find, listening to music, writing poetry, whatever it might be, anything that shifts you into a place of experiencing the now is helpful in really rebalancing our nervous system. We call that those types of activities, cultivate what we call the soothing nervous system. We have the fight, flight, freeze nervous system. We have the doing, grasping nervous system. And then when we and those are both useful, but when they're overused, they burn us out. And then this capacity to rest and come back into the moment creates that soothing nervous system that allows us to really respond to the world in a more intelligent, wise way. And it's a lifetime of practice. I've been doing this for 40 years, and I still feel like I'm fairly much at the beginning, getting some insights the last few years, but there's a lot of momentum in the thinking mind. So we have to be patient as well. But there's benefits all along the way that we can tap into. So again, I'll open it up, and if not, we'll do a little longer practice. Yes, there. I thought I saw a hand up. I've answered everyone's questions. That's what I anticipated. There would be no questions. Maybe this is more of an indication that I talk so much there, I don't leave much space for any questions.
Yep,
So,
I can share.
yep.
Jackie, yeah.
I know I've had a yoga teacher frame it in this way, that the mind, be thankful for the mind and all the work that it does for us. But then like she might prompt us then during the yoga class to, now the mind gets a break, and we're going to give the mind a break, for the next few minutes or minute or whatever it might be. So I find that framing useful, to think about it that way, like the mind deserves a break, so we can take a rest from having to think and analyze. And so that's been helpful for me to think about it in those terms.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I've used sometimes where when I'll start the meditation, I'll say, if you notice any distractions that might be in the mind, things that might be heavy on your mind, it could be distractions during your practice, just invite them to go over to this nice oak tree that has a hammock in it, and they can lay in there for the next half an hour or so and take a break. You'll get back to them, you'll attend to them, but for now, they get the luxury of just resting. And oftentimes the unconscious mind will go, oh yeah, that sounds good. I guess they're not forgetting about me or pushing me away, but they're just giving me a break. And so, yeah, anything we can do like that, because the unconscious mind is always bubbling, and any intention we can send to it, or an affirmation that doesn't push it away, but supports it, but gives it space to rest, is wise action. Yeah, I think as we cultivate mindfulness more and more, what happens is there's more space between the thoughts. Thoughts are still arising, coming and going, but there's more space of quietude. And within that quietude, that's where we have capacity to respond more wisely. We can see often the thoughts that are habit patterns, that are just automatic patterns, that are old preferences or assumptions that may no longer be accurate. So there's a capacity to kind of inquire into what's real with this thinking mind, because we can make a lot of old repetitive errors by just doing the same old thing. And with mindfulness, we can see into what's wise and what's not useful, or maybe damaging. And we do that with I do that with food. Sometimes I have awareness for a moment of only 2 cookies, and then 15 minutes later, the awareness abates and a 3rd cookie is consumed. And then I have to forgive myself and try to set the intention that, okay, this is not really meeting my needs here. I'm interested in health. The momentary satisfaction, is it worth compromising the health? And that can take a long time, because there's probably something deeper there of why I'm eating a cookie as well. Sometimes I investigate that, but not always. Other comments, questions, or in-house? Any questions here? I can focus on the screen too much. Last thing I'll say, I'm in a very fortunate space in my life right now where I'm retired, and I'm able to go on what I call retreat, get away from the house for a few days. And that disconnecting from the noise of the world can be really powerful. The place I go to doesn't have Wi-Fi, or they didn't have Wi-Fi, which was really good. And then they just got Wi-Fi the last time I went. And unfortunately, I put in the passcode, so I was looking at some of my material on my phone. But and so now I have to really discipline myself. The place I can disconnect now is reconnected to the world. which is to the distractions of the phone, which for many of us, I think is a big one. It can consume a lot of your time and energy. But taking time out to shift from your normal routine, again, can give you some space to see more clearly what's important in life. And that could just be an afternoon, maybe going someplace where you can walk and then sit for a while, maybe inside, or if it's warm enough, you can just stay outside. But having that space, and I think for a lot of people, nature can be that kind of disconnect from the busy world. So, all right, want to move into a little more practice?
Yep.
All right. If I disappear from the room, I will be back. Since we don't have breaks built into this practice, don't think I'm leaving, but I may stay here the whole time. We'll see. So again, let me pull out my little sheet here. Maybe not. Yeah. There's I think most of you probably received the link in your email to this class, and there's a book reference in there, The Mind Illuminated. And this is on page 45 of that book. Don't grab your book. But he has something he calls preparation for meditation. And it's not necessary to do all this, but it's kind of interesting in that it creates a transition from the busy life that we're leading and then moving into practice. It's helpful to have a little bit of transition into our quiet practice, because it's hard to just be doing, and then stop, sit, and think the mind's going to settle and we're not going to have distractions. And distractions are fine, but if we don't have that transition, the distractions can be what most of our practice is about, which sometimes isn't that beneficial. So this is kind of that transition between the doing of the day, moving into your practice, whether that's in the morning or the evening, or whatever time it might be. And so just getting in a comfortable posture, as before, feet are flat on the floor. Back is fairly straight, chin is tipped down a little bit, eyes can be closed. We just begin by reviewing our motivation. So review your purpose for even doing this practice today, this meditation. Just be honest with yourself. And don't judge yourself for whatever reason it might be. It might be just to get relief from our inner bully, our inner dialogue, or to be able to work with pain with less suffering, or just being kinder to ourselves, or quietude, whatever it might be. What's the motivation? So, letting go of any expectations within this practice. And this is part of our learning, is there's no good or bad meditation. The mind will do, and the emotions and the body will do what they will do. You may experience all those dimensions as pleasant sometimes, as unpleasant, and maybe even neutral. And the essence is just being with what's happening as it's happening, without grabbing on to those things that are maybe pleasant or pushing away the unpleasant. So we're developing this capacity to just have equanimity with whatever is arising, a deep open-hearted acceptance of our moment-by-moment experience, whatever it is, pleasant or unpleasant. So no expectations for any specific experience or outcome, which again is future focus. It's not in the present moment. And then this connecting to diligence, maybe resolving to stay diligent for the entire 20 minutes or so, bringing energy into the body and the mind so we're noticing what's happening while it's happening. Not this, taking a break and daydreaming, getting lost in thoughts, but being diligent to really be with what's happening. And then this final one is about distractions. So just noticing any things in your life right now that might come up to distract you. And just acknowledge these thoughts and emotions. And again, just letting them know you'll get to them a little bit later, but they can just rest right now. And you just set the intention to allow them to rest. Now we'll move into practice. And again, just starting with noticing the feet on the floor. Noticing the sits bones on the chair, the seat. And again, when I say notice, we're just resting in the moment by moment sensations in the body as we place the attention on different parts of the body. And this trains the attention. That attention is just resting in present moment experience of sensations. Sensing into the back, and contacts the chair. Noticing temperature, pressure. And bringing attention into the front of the body, into the abdominal area. Feeling the rise and fall of the abdomen. And bringing the attention up into the chest. Feeling the lungs and the heart, the ribs expanding and contracting. And as we exhale, there's that invitation to soften, soothe, and rest. The essence of our meditation practice ultimately is just resting. In the beginning, there's a bit of effort to notice certain objects like the breath. But there's no straining to keep that object in attention in an absolute way. And what I mean by that is describe this as, so just noticing the breath, for instance, now in the chest. call this the foreground of attention. So we're looking forward into the forest, into the breath, noticing the sensations. But we're not straining to shut out anything from the background. And what I mean by background is there may be thoughts, emotions, other material coming in through the senses, sounds, smells, tastes. And those we just allow to come and go, as I say, in the background, kind of floating by like clouds above us. They're there, but there's no need to interact or grab onto or push them away. They're just doing their thing. While we continue to just rest attention on that sensation of the breath in the chest. Just resting in that moment by moment sensation of the inhale, the exhale in the chest. Just resting. So there's really no effort involved. We're simply being with the moment by moment experience of the breath in the chest, and now shifting that attention into the nose now to help kind of focus the attention in a very narrow space of the nose, feeling the coolness of the air coming through the nostrils on the inhale. That moisture or warmth on the exhale through the nose. So again, the attention is soft on the foreground object of the sensation of the breath in the nose, and the mind and the body are open and spacious to background experience, just allowing that all to come and go, while resting in the breath. And when thoughts, what happens as we rest the attention on the breath? The mind can begin to wander from that object of the breath. We forget the object and move into mind wandering. And at some point, we will probably notice that the mind has traveled some distance from the object of the breath. And in that moment of remembering that we were intending to be with the object, we celebrate that moment of waking up, of realizing we've forgotten the breath. No judgment around it. It's natural and normal. And we just notice that. Valuing that waking up moment. And gently just returning back to the moment by moment cessation of the breath in the nose. And we do this over and over again. Each time forgetting occurs, wandering happens, and in that moment of remembering, coming back to the breath. Maybe noticing, so we're noticing the sensation of the breath as we inhale, following it all the way in. And then we may notice just a slight pause, then the sensation of the breath as we exhale, all the way out. And again, there might be a slight pause or transition between the in breath and out breath. So we just notice this 4 parts: beginning of the in breath, the pause for the out breath, and beginning of the out breath, the pause for the in breath. Just resting. Allowing the breath to be natural. Moving at its own pace. Wonders, noticing that. Judgment. Back to the breath. Sensation in the nose. Now we'll move into a compassion practice. And I'd like you to imagine if there's a thunderstorm going on right now in your mind, just visualizing that. And we're going to cultivate empathy for a being. And this being could be a child, or maybe it's a little kitten or a young puppy. And they're scared of the thunderstorm. And we're there for them, offering some level of soothing to help calm them as we see their fear and their suffering and our heartfelt desire to alleviate that suffering. So however that might appear for you, for maybe a young child or a pet, in that moment of deep fear and nervousness and uncertainty, we provide some level of soothing to help calm this being. Then we extend words of kindness towards this being. May you be happy and joyful in this moment. May you be healthy in mind, healthy in body, healthy in spirit. May you know inner peace. May you know peace in your relationships. May you be free from suffering and free from the causes of suffering. And now just imagining someone in your life now who may be in need of support and care and compassion and understanding, love and forgiveness. And just bringing an image of that being into your mind's eye. And we'll extend this loving kindness to this being as well. And I'll tap the bell after each of these phrases to just have a sense of radiating this out to this being. May you be happy and joyful in this moment. May you be healthy in mind, healthy in body, healthy in spirit. Now, in peace, in peace. May you be free from suffering. May you live with ease, be content. Live. Staying connected to this place of care, of compassion, felt for that injured, scared being in the beginning. Our heartfelt wish for soothing, healing, and peace in other beings. And we extend this quality to all beings. And this imagining, we extend this quality of loving kindness in front of us, behind us, above us, below us, to the left and the right. And we just radiate this loving kindness to all beings across this planet and beyond this galaxy, to all dimensions of this universe, that all beings might be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and joyful as we radiate out the sound. Spreading to this vast universe. May all beings be healthy in mind, healthy in body, healthy in spirit. May all beings know inner peace. May all beings know peace in all their relationships. Seeing the true beauty, essential loving nature of all beings at their core. Be free from suffering, free from the causes of suffering, be they interpersonal, internal, or structural. All these dimensions find peace and healing, and be free from suffering at the inner relational, and structural dimensions. I think it's transforming the fusion, separateness, this loving kindness permeates every atom of this universe. May all beings be content and at peace. Please bring the attention back to this one here. This unique expression of the divine, its body, however that's expressed for you. Appreciating our gifts and honoring those gifts that we each have that are unique. Letting go of the often judgmental mind that tends to dwell on what we see as lacking, which is only a thought, and connecting to our basic goodness, opening to that dimension of our wholeness, and opening or inviting that wholeness to flower, to come forward in all of its glory. May I be happy and joyful in this moment. May this being be healthy in mind and body and with spirit. This one, know inner peace and peace in relationships. And be free from suffering and free from the causes of suffering. Be content and live with ease. Into this loving kindness in the heart, and just imagining this kindness as a flame in the heart, that it grows and grows and fills the chest and the belly and the arms and the legs. Every cell just illuminated with this fire of loving kindness. Extending kindness to ourselves, kindness to our closest relationships, kindness to the difficult ones in our lives and in the world, wishing them peace and joy. Kindness to all beings in all worlds. And then just bring the attention now back into the belly, just feeling the breath in the belly. Being with the sensations of the abdomen as it rises and falls. Softening it into each exhale. Soften, soothe, and relax. Rest. And dropping the attention down through the hips and the thighs, down through the knees, the calves, the shins, down into the ankles, into the feet. And again, just feeling a sense of this body of ours, its energy extending down into this Mother Earth. Giving gratitude for this unconditional support and love that this earth gives us with each breath. Gratitude to the plant kingdom for this breath, all the planktons in the sea, and all this beautiful life that connects and sustains this moment of breath. Gratitude for this earth. Gratitude for this Mother Earth. And gratitude to our mothers, which gave us birth. The cycle of life turns on and coming into form, flowering, dissolving, reconnecting, arising again in life, in the cycle of coming and going. And any benefit that you may have experienced today is taking that in, knowing that that benefit is your true nature. It's not outside of you. It's always present. It's when we slow down. And noticing any critical qualities that may have come up in our practice, knowing that's just how the mind works. It's totally fine. And we don't have to take it seriously. It's just there trying to protect us. But in this moment, it may not be needed. So just taking a deep breath, wiggling the toes and the fingers. And as you open the eyes, as I mentioned earlier, just kind of keeping that peripheral awareness, kind of having a sense of the space in the room as well as the objects. So not just tuning into the objects, but also being simultaneously aware of the space between objects. Well, thank you for being here tonight. If there's any comments or questions, I invite those, but if you're fine, you don't have to say anything, but the floor is open. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Be kind to yourself.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.